This is the 20th and final recording of Ovid's The Metamorphoses. We start with the return of Numa, his death, and the grief of Egeria here. Men say that Numa returned to his own land from there. That is, he's just finished meeting with Pythagoras and hearing about all of Pythagoras' theories that are there. His wisdom greater for the instruction, and he reigned in Latium, happy in his wife Egeria, a nymph, and with the guidance of the Muses he taught the people holy rites and trained them from warlike ways to peace. Numa is credited with setting up, historically and elsewhere, not just in Ovid, the establishment of most of the Romans' religious traditions, as well as how to organize the army and thing. He's kind of the second founder. He's right after Romulus, so he comes together and teaches them all these sorts of things through long years, and then eventually he died. Egeria fled the city lamenting because, she's lost her husband there. And Theseus' son Hippolytus spoke to her and says, others have borne such losses. The story of Hippolytus, then, is Hippolytus' tale of, other losses that people have had to deal with and the sorts of difficulties that they've had. He ends up talking about Pasiphae's daughter, Phaedra, my father's wife, tried to seduce me, to have me make a cuckold of my father. She failed, but what she wanted, she pretended that I had wanted, and she lied about it, accused me to him. That is, she's describing a situation that in literature is often referred to as Potiphar's wife, a tale that we get in the Old Testament, in the Bible, that the woman attempts to seduce the young man. He refuses because of his father, master, employer, something like that. The person who is actually in the relationship with the woman, the legitimate relationship with the woman. And then, rather than it just kind of going away, the woman then turns and tells the man that she's associated with legitimately that the young man had tried to seduce her. And then the young man then gets in trouble over this sort of thing. In this case, Hippolytus goes into exile and has his difficulties there. His chariot crashed. He would have died there. You would have seen my entrails torn from my body, muscles impaled on prongs, limbs partly shattered, partly dragged on or left behind, all broken. You would have heard the crack of my snapping bones, seen the last breath go out of me. You would not have known me, not in any part, for I was simply one great wound. So he dies in the crash there. He died, went to the sunless world of death in the burning river. Paeon, who is son of great Apollo, brought me back to life. So he is resurrected in this one. Diana veiled me in a thick cloud so that no man might see me. This usual, kind of hiding who he is in this case. So, nobody knows who he is. Then you get about halfway through here, he is changed into a new person. Our line, Hippolytus no more. Let me see. There we go. Top of the left-hand side. Hippolytus no more. You shall be Virbius, the twice-born man. So wir, man, and then the bius there, twice, second. So she decreed, and always from that time this grove has been my dwelling. A lesser god, I am sheltered by the greater, and all my devotion is hers. So this is the protection and thanks that he gives to Diana for what happened. No such story could soothe Egeria's grief until Diana formed a cool fountain from her body. She is transformed into a spring. We then have a transformation phrased as a comparison, where we talk about the transformation of Tages. The last part of the story, no less amazed was Romulus when he saw the spear he planted suddenly put forth leaves. So we get another transformation as comparison, where the spear of Romulus is changed into a tree. And the story of Kippis starts again with this one. No less amazed was Kippis. So a third tale of transformation that's being set up as comparison to Egeria. We're kind of piling on these transformations all at once. Seeing on his forehead's horns jutting out. So our character here, Kippis, has the horns grow on his head. He made an altar of the green turf, poured wine and sprinkled incense, made offerings of sheep, and studied the entrails for further signs. Etruscan seers and augurs joined in the study, and at first were baffled. So they're getting signs here. The horns are meant to be a sign that he is king. This place in Latium's citadels bow down to Kippis. Only hasten, enter the gates that stand wide open, waiting. But Kippis doesn't want to be king. But Kippis kept his gaze away, recoiling. May the gods avert such a destiny. He called together the people and the revered senate. But he hid his horns with a laurel, and he stood above them. So we have the people in assembly, and he's going to address them in this case, to see what's going to happen. prayed to the gods in the old ways and says, "There is one here who will be king unless you make him an exile. His name I will not tell you. You will know him, for he is wearing horns upon his forehead," and tells the story that's there. The people cry out, "Who is the man?" They stood there looking at each other's foreheads trying to find the horns. Then Kippis spoke, "Here is the man you see," and took the laurel from off his temples that they tried to stop him showing the two horns. So they are sad for him, that this has happened, that he is prophesied to be king, but he doesn't want to be king, and so off they go. He's not going to be able to stay here in this case. At the top of the next page, we have the Senate gave him as a gift of honor whatever land a sturdy team of oxen could plow from dawn to darkness, and the horns, in all their marvelous beauty, adorn the pillars of their gates forever. Now we get the story of I can never say his name properly. I always want to say Asclepius, but it's Asclepius, there we go, the Roman way. We start off with a reinvocation of the Muses, and now, O Muses, helper of the poets, you knowers and remembers, aid the telling of how an island in the Tiber's channel brought the god Asclepius to Rome. You start off with a deadly pestilence, a sickness that's there, and they can't figure out how to get away from it, so they went to Delphi, Earth's center, and we get the prophecy here. What you are seeking in Delphi, Romans, you should have sought for nearer. Go seek it nearer home. Apollo cannot lessen your trouble, but Apollo's son has power to help you. Go with good omens and call upon him. So the wise Senate listened, and they sent to Epidaurus by ship to find him. Now they beached their vessel there, and the elders, that is, of the Greeks at Epidaurus, differed among themselves. Some wanted to give the gift outright, others more favored to keeping their god, their wealth, their aid, their guardian. So there's conflict over whether or not the Romans can have the god in this case, whether they can get the assistance there. Asclepius seemed in dream to stand before the Roman's couch, and he spoke, or seemed to, "Be not afraid, I shall come and leave my statues. But see this serpent, as it twines around the rod I carry? Mark it well and learn it, for I shall be this serpent." So he's going to transform into this serpent. He's going to be as a snake, and that's how they will know it. The gods, all crested with gold in serpent form, uttered a warning, hissed terribly, a sign that he was coming. So as a snake, Asclepius ends up choosing the Romans. He reared high, he stood there, and he gazed about him with fiery eyes. And as the people shuddered, the priest knew him and said, "The God, behold the God. Bow down to him in word and spirit, all who stand here, that we may see his beauty as our blessing here at his shrine." And all the people worshipped. The Romans also gave sign of deep devotion, and the god was gracious, signifying his lasting favor. He then leaves the city, glides on out, and is going, elsewhere at this point. He's not going to stay here. He's going to go along with the Romans, and he gets on the ship. So he came to the harbor with its curving walls and halted, and went aboard the ship. Now, the part that starts here at the bottom, soft breezes blew the vessel on. This is the catalog of ports. We're talking about a whole bunch of ports that they pass by, and some of them of some significance and others that we can skip by. 5 days to Italy, and by these various ports we end up going. Of these, there is and Naples, we know Naples, founded for leisure, famous for the temple of the Cumaean Sibyl. That Cumaean Sibyl is the one in the Aeneid, Book 6, that ends up taking Aeneas into the underworld. Ba'i, which is known to them. There's the pestilential town beyond Caeta, named for Aeneas's nurse. That's at the very beginning of Book 7 of the Aeneid, when the nurse dies, and this port is named for her. Past Formii, past Antium, we're getting very close there. Their course to landward, and the god unfolded his coils and came in looping, curving motion to his father's temple on the yellow shore. So the god as a snake makes landfall to see the temple of Apollo. But then he gets back on the ship because they're not to Rome yet. Came to Castrum, to the mouth of the Tiber, Lavinium's holy place. The Romans are there, came thronging down to meet him, men and matrons and maids and vestals. They cried hosannas as the swift ship rode on upstream, and incense crackled on altars on both sides of the river. He had entered Rome, the capital of the world, climbed the mast, swung his head about as if to seek his proper habitation. Just at this point, the river breaks and flows a double stream around a mole of land men call the island. This is the Tiber Island that's there in the middle of the Tiber River, just off the shore of the Forum. Here the serpent's son, Apollo's offspring, came to land, put on his heavenly form again, and to the people brought health and end of mourning. Now, this tale of pestilence and the arrival of the god Aesculapius in Rome is about a temple that was dedicated on the Tiber Island in 289 BC. So Ovid, in his history of Rome, is dwelling a lot on the Romulus tale and things around it, and then Numa and things around Numa, and then very quickly skips over about 400 years and gets us down to 289 BC. And the next part, the deification of Caesar, skips us down another 140 years and gets us to like the end of Caesar. So he's not telling much history when it comes to Rome in the Republican period, just a couple of very small events and large gaps in what's happening. Presumably because if you wish to know more about what was going on with the Roman Republic, you could find it elsewhere. So now we get towards the very end of our tale, the deification of Caesar. The old god came to our shrines from foreign lands, but Caesar is God in his own city. First in war and first in peace, victorious, triumphant, planner and governor, quick risen to glory, the newest star in heaven, and more than this, and above all, immortal through his son. So a great deal of praise for Julius Caesar himself, and then his son is Augustus, a reference to the fact that Julius Caesar adopted Octavian in his will, and Octavian, by the time this epic is being written, has adopted and has been using the name Augustus for decades. The father of our own emperor, to have tamed the Britons, which is a claim he's making for Julius Caesar. Julius Caesar did invade Britain twice, but in no wise did he tame it. Britain was still independent entirely of Rome, surrounded by the fortress of their ocean, to have led a proud victorious armada up seven-mouthed Nile, to have added to the empire rebel Numidia, Libya, and Pontus. So he wins against Egypt, that is, he sails towards Egypt, that's where Pompey died. Numidia, Libya, those are areas that he ends up going and beating opponents there. Pontus, his campaign, Julius Caesar's campaign in Pontus, is the one where he utters, Veni, Vidi, Vici, I came, I saw, I conquered. He had many triumphs, 4 specifically in 1 month. Greatness surpassed only by being father of one yet greater, one who rules the world. So again, a reference to Augustus, the one who rules the world there. We cannot think him mortal, our Augustus, therefore our Julius must be a god to justify his son. That is, Augustus is so great that it only makes sense that he is the son of a god there. And Venus saw this and saw as well the murder plotted against her priest. Julius Caesar is the Pontifex Maximus, and so this is the priest that he's talking about here. Behold, behold what treason threatens me with this heavy weight. What ambush is set to take Ulysses' last descendant. So Venus is going about to the gods about Julius Caesar's murder in this case. You know, the fact that he's going to get killed. The Ulysses' last descendant there is a reference to the fact that Iulus Ascanius, who is the son of Aeneas, is claimed by the Julians as their ancestor. Iulus, Julius, very close names as far as their claim goes. Once again, the spear of Diomedes strikes to wound me. The walls of Troy fall over me in ruins. Once more, I see my son, Julius Caesar, her very descended great-grandson, Aeneas, her immediate son, long wandering, storm-tossed, to go down to the shades and rise again to speak with Turnus, or to speak more truly with Juno. So, comparing her loss of Aeneas, or the troubles that Aeneas had, with her troubles now. And they are whetting their daggers. The anxious goddess cried these complaints through heaven, and no one listened. The gods were moved, and though they could not shatter the iron mandates of the ancient sisters, that is, the fates, they still gave certain portents. So we got a whole bunch of signs of the evil that is going to come. Storm clouds, horns heard, lurid light, firebrands, clouds dripped blood rust color, the moon rode in a blood-red car, Stygian owl wailed, ivory statues dripped tears, the wailing traveled the holy groves, and threats were heard. No victim paid expiation, and the liver warned of desperate strife to come. Dogs howled by night, shadows of the silent went roaming, and great earthquakes shook the city. These portents and ones like them are things that happen when something big and important is occurring, and is said to have happened immediately before Caesar was assassinated. The great storm in particular happening the night before he's killed. No warning of the gods could check the plotting men, avert the doom of fate. Drawn swords were borne into a temple. That is, they were meeting at the Theater of Pompey, which is technically a temple to Venus because there's a temple at the top of the theater seating there. Nowhere else in the whole city was suitable for murder save where the Senate met, which is quite a condemnation of the Senate there, that the Senate is where murder happens. Of course, by this point, Augustus has largely cowed the Senate, and it is a bunch of senators who plot and succeed in the assassination of Caesar. Venus beat her breast, tried to hide him, her Caesar, in a cloud. This concealing of the hero in the cloud, something that we read in the Odyssey, but Venus specifically had hid Paris from Menelaus, as she mentions here, that's Iliad Book 3. Aeneas fled Diomedes' sword, that's Iliad Book 5. And Jove spoke to her and says, there's nothing that can be done about what's written on bronze and solid iron, the unchangeable records of the fates he's talking about here, the destinies of the race, unchangeable. I have read them and remembered. I will tell you so you may know the future. So Jupiter knows of Julius Caesar's fate. He has finished the time allotted him. It is Caesar's going to die. But he will enter the heaven as a god and have his temples on earth as well. This you will see fulfilled. You and his son together, that is Augustus, Augustus shall inherit both the name of Caesar and the great burden. And we both shall help him avenge his father's murder. So Jove and Venus will assist Augustus in avenging the murder. Under him, Mutia's conquered walls will sue for mercy, which is something that Octavian did against Mark Antony's sister and brother who were raising rebellion against Octavian in Italy. Pharsalia will know his power, which is, a battle there. And Philippi, red with blood again. Philippi is where the battle happens between Antony and Octavian on one side against the forces of Brutus on the other. And one more Pompey go down to death in the Sicilian waters. This is Sextus Pompey, the son of Pompey the Great, who was also defeated by these people. A Roman general's Egyptian woman, which is a circumlocution, obviously. We're speaking about Mark Antony, the Roman general, and the Egyptian woman is Cleopatra, but we're not talking about them directly. We don't mention them. This is really the only play that Mark Antony and Cleopatra get in the whole poem, which is very similar to in the Aeneid, where Mark Antony and Cleopatra get very short mention in this one. They are the villains in this particular episode. Foolish, the Roman general, to trust that liaison with the Egyptian woman, will perish for all her threats that our own Capel would serve Canopus, that Egypt would conquer Rome. Need I bring to mind barbarian lands? When peace comes to all the world, his mind will turn to law and order, Augustus's, civil justice. And his good wife's young son should take his name, his duty when he lays the burden down, though he will live as long as ancient Nestor before he comes to heaven to greet his kinsmen. So we acknowledge the fact that sooner or later, Augustus will die, but he will have a long life like Nestor, who in some accounts lives to nearly 300. That good wife's young son, the good wife is Livia, and the young son is Tiberius. And by the time that Ovid is writing this epic, Tiberius has been adopted as the son of Augustus and has taken on, of course, Augustus's proper name, Caesar and things like that. So a reference back to Tiberius, and it's clear by the time of this epic that Tiberius will be the heir. Now in the meantime, from the murdered body of Julius Caesar, raise up the spirit. Set the soul of Julius as a new star in heaven to watch over our marketplace, our capital. So he ended, and Venus raised from the body of Caesar the fleeting spirit not to be lost. And as she bore it, she felt it burn, released it from her bosom, and saw it rise beyond the moon, a comet. So Julius Caesar turns into a comet, and this is the shooting star comet that is seen by the Romans after Caesar dies and is interpreted as Julius Caesar's soul being carried up to heaven. It's kind of the origin of his deification story. And now he sees his son's good acts, that is Julius Caesar watches over Augustus, confessing they are greater than his own, for once rejoicing in being conquered. But the son refuses to have his glory set above his father's. That is, Augustus is humble in the presence of his father. He is pious, he is dutiful, he's doing what he should do in a case like this. Fame will not heed him, for she needs no mortal, exalts him much against his will, resists him in this one instance only. So Augustus is forced to be greater. So must Atreus defer to Agamemnon. That's a father and son pair again. So does Theseus pass Aegeus, again, a son and father pair. And Achilles Peleus, a son and father pair. So Augustus is being compared to Agamemnon and Theseus and Achilles, and Julius Caesar to their lesser fathers, sons greater than their fathers. And one more instance where the father's glory yields to the son, Saturn is less than Jove. So Augustus compared to the supreme god of the Olympians. Earth acknowledges Augustus, each is father and each is lord. O gods, Aeneas' comrades, to whom the fire and sword gave way, I pray you. The I here is Ovid the poet, speaking for himself. And for you, O native gods of Italy, Quirinus, father of Rome, that's the alternate name for Romulus there once he's deified, and Mars, the father of Rome's unconquered sire, Mars the father of Romulus, and Vesta, honored with Caesar's household gods, Apollo, tended with reverence as Vesta is, and Jove, whose temple crowns Tarpeia's rock, Jove up on the Capitoline Mount. O gods, however many, whom the poet's longing may properly invoke, far be the day, later than our own era, when Augustus shall leave the world he rules. So may he have a long life, may Augustus live for a long time. Ascend to heaven, and there beyond our presence hear our prayers. So Augustus, we are wishing for him to have long life, and when he dies, Ovid is acknowledging, suggesting, pointing out that what we're all expecting, that Augustus too will be made into a god and answer our prayers. So very complimentary of Augustus here at the end. The last little section, the epilogue, is Ovid speaking to us, the readers. Now I have done my work. It will endure, I trust, beyond Jove's anger, fire and sword, beyond time's hunger. The day will come, I know, so let it come, that day which no power save over my body to end my span of life, whatever it may be. That is, Ovid acknowledges that someday he will die. Still, part of me, the better part, immortal, which is a sentiment that we find in Horace as well. I have raised a monument more lasting than bronze, that, not all of me shall die. That sentiment that we find in Horace, we find here in Ovid. Ovid's of the younger generation. Still part of me, the better part, immortal, will be born above the stars. My name will be remembered. Wherever Roman power rules conquered lands, I shall be read. And through all centuries, if prophecies of bards are ever truthful, I shall be living always. To which we might say, yeah, Ovid is a very widely read work throughout the medieval period. The tales that Ovid tells are the myths that end up forming the core of what we understand about Greco-Roman mythology, save only the Trojan cycle that we get largely from Homer. We are still reading Ovid. His work has survived and lasted. And that's how he chooses to end there, with Augustus's imminent deification, which will be happening hopefully long in the future, when Augustus finally, after a very long life, dies, and Ovid's final wish that he'll be remembered, and that his better part, his skill, his talent, his poem here, will be remembered.